again, and welcome to this week's episode of Chronic Cuppa, bringing back the office brew and a moment's mindfulness to your day. So there is definitely tea in this mug, but I'm going to be talking about gin today. I would be drinking a lot more probably if there were gin in the mug, but on that note, I need to do my signature sign-on sip. Try and do a bit more drinking, a bit less talking. So I'm sure when I launched this whole series, there were probably loads of people that know me, work with me, friends that were thinking, I'm really surprised actually that she's drinking tea, not gin, because everyone who knows me knows that I am obsessed with gin. Aside from the obvious, one of the things that I really love about gin is actually its significance and place in culture, history, politics throughout time, right up to present day as well. So it's a massive saturated market. To put it into perspective, last year in 2019, over 83 million bottles of gin were sold. But despite that, and despite the fact that it is a very saturated market, brands, businesses are continuing to actually respond to that and innovate with things like gin liqueurs, different tonics, even down to the kind of gin bottles now that you can get, and thinking about people upcycling, etc. So when I am not working and when we're not in a lockdown, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is geeking out on gin distillery tours. And this mug was one that I purchased from a local distillery to me a few years ago called Cotswold Distillery. What's really interesting about this particular distillery, and which I really love, particularly in the current climate and its relevance, is the backstory of how it was established and the background of the person who started building the business, who previously worked in New York finance and had this dream of running their own whiskey distillery. Now, whiskey is quite a difficult, timely spirit to produce. Going from grain to cask, it takes about 3 years. So to see any return on investment and to have a really sustainable business model, you obviously need something to keep you going for 3 years until you're ready to sell your whiskey. So with all of the overheads all in place and the distillery set up, the owner decided that they could make use of the current materials and equipment that they had access to and start producing gin instead, which is a much quicker, easier, cheaper spirit to initially start to actually produce. And that's how they were able to keep going, by retailing their gin first for the first few years. So the other thing that I really love when I go on a distillery tour is finding out the name of the still. And in particular, this story again was really interesting because one of the stills was called Mary. And again, coming back to the owner having previously worked in the city, worked in finance, this particular still, Mary, was evidently named after the song Proud Mary. And it wasn't until a bit later on when my dad, who'd been on the tour with me, said, "Oh, I get it." I was like, What do you mean? What do you get? And he said, think about the lyrics in the song Proud Mary. I was like, okay. Left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day. So they didn't mention that in the tour, but we think maybe that was a little bit of a nod to the backstory there. If you want to find out more about this particular distillery as well as drinking their gin, I should say that I'm really excited to see that they are just about to launch a book called Spirit Guide, which is all about this backstory. So I'm desperate to get my hands on a copy and find out more about it. It looks amazing. So this week though, it really got me thinking about mindfully listening to music, and how often do we have music on as white noise in the background, keeping us going whilst we're doing work, exercise, whatever, not really actually absorbing it, engaging with it, or taking it in. So this week's task is to pick a song, any song. It could be a favourite song, a song you haven't listened to in years, something completely new, and just experience it purely in its entirety and do whatever the hell you want to do to the song, whether it's dance, cry, listen to it intently, whatever it is you want to do. So suffice it to say, I will be picking Generation X and Billy Idol's Dancing With Myself, and guess what? I will be dancing with myself. So I hope you have fun with this week's task, and remember, let's think another drink because it'll give me time to think. Have a great week.